Hello again, everybody. This is Red of Half Century Collecting Sports Cards, and today I want to go through the Classic Era Hall of Fame ballot. It's something I've seen a few videos posted recently. I've got big interest in the Hall of Fame as it's a collection I started about 30 years ago of trying to get a cool card of everybody as a playing day card who's in the Hall of Fame. So this will impact my collection, although I don't think there'll be any big cards from these guys. They today just announced who's going to be voting, and there's 16 members on the voting committee. You have to get 12 yes votes to make it into the Hall of Fame, so 12 out of 16. These 5 ex-players are going to be on the committee that decides who gets in. The other 11 are baseball executives, guys like Sandy Alderson, Artie Moreno, and then there's some media members in there and a few baseball historians in that mix. Now, none of these 5 I noticed were big-time teammates of any of these 8 on the Hall of Fame, so hopefully that takes away a lot of the bias. I'm going to go through in order my picks, and my number 1 pick of the guys on the ballot this go around is John Donaldson. And for everybody, I just want to give a little why they should get in, why they shouldn't get in. So John Donaldson, pretty simply, John McGraw, old-time manager, executive for the New York Giants, had some great teams. He said that he really wanted to sign John Donaldson if he could. At that time, of course, he couldn't, as no black players were allowed. He said, man, I would win tons of pennants if I could get John Donaldson. And he also said he's the best pitcher that he's ever seen. So for John McGraw to say that Donaldson was the best pitcher he's ever seen when he had Christy Mathewson on his own staff, I thought was, it meant a lot. Another reason, after the Negro Leagues concluded, they had a reunion where they were voting the best players at each position, and Donaldson was voted the best left-handed pitcher from the Negro Leagues. And you know, this is an era, I guess, when baseball was probably the number 1 black participant sport. And to be the best at his position, I think that's probably deserving right there of being in the Hall of Fame. A couple other big things about him. He was the king of barnstorming, which was huge back in the 1910s, 20s, 30s. He probably was the king of barnstorming, as he got pulled away from the Negro Leagues even in 1924 to sign with the Fulda Fishermen, a little town team in Minnesota. He played on a lot of town teams in Minnesota in the 1920s. In fact, they were actually able to get real stats from him, and he won over 400 games or 5,000 strikeouts, 1.37 career ERA in those games. Now, those may not be against big-time major league competition, but he was pulled away because he made more money playing there with barnstorming than he could have in the Negro Leagues. He signed a contract with Fulda there for $325 a month in 1924. And then another reason I'm going to give, that he was the first black major league scout. So some contributions other than playing. This was in 1949 for the Chicago White Sox that he was a major league scout. So probably the best pitcher along with Jose Mendez in the 19-teens, which I think puts him way up. Now, why would you say he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame? The time that he did spend in the Negro Leagues in the early 1920s, and then the Seamheads also came out with some stats in the 1910s that he played, against some of the best Negro League competition, although it wasn't actually the Negro Leagues at the time. But his career record there was actually under 500, 23 and 25. But even though he had that, his career ERA there was 2.79. And if you do this ERA plus, which compares him against other players, his number came out to 123, which is actually the same as Juan Marichal, who's one of the better Hall of Famers and real close to Tom Seaver and Bob Gibson, who are at 127. And it is better than the other two pitchers on this list, Louis Tiant and Tommy John. So that's it for John Donaldson. Next, we're going to move this over, and we're going to talk Louis Tiant. So he's my number 2 pick, another pitcher. Now, why in for Louis Tiant? Career 65.6 WAR, which is the highest on this ballot. Had some real good peak years. 1968, shown here on the back of the 69 card. He had a league-leading 1.60 ERA, had 9 shutouts that year, over a strikeout an inning, led the league in WAR. Then he ended up with some arm troubles as he left the Cleveland Indians, where he went to the Twins. But then he came back real strong with the Boston Red Sox. With the Red Sox, 3 times won 20 games, won another ERA title with a 1.91 in 1972. He had 3 real good starts in the 75 World Series and ended his career there with the New York Yankees. But he won 229 games in his career. Now, why not in the Hall of Fame? The question is, did he have enough good standout years? His highest Cy Young total was just 4th. Though I would argue that in 68, he probably should have been right behind Denny McLain in 2nd. And he only made 3 all-star teams. But he would still be my number 2 pick. All right, number 3 on my list is Dick Allen. Now, Dick Allen, you say, why in? Well, his first 11 seasons in the league were terrific. 6 of those with the Phillies, include one of the best rookie seasons that you probably ever would see. Had 8.8 WAR as a rookie, 125 runs scored, 201 hits, 80 extra base hits, over 350 total bases. So just a great rookie season, and he followed up with more good years. Had a good year with the Cardinals, had a good year with the Dodgers, and then went to the White Sox, where he won an MVP in 1972. He ended his career with 351 homers in a pitcher's era. You can see he get to play back with the Phillies again. So why not? Say besides those 11 consecutive terrific years, he really didn't have another good year. His best year other than those 11 was a 0.7 WAR. He was a bad defender. In fact, so bad that his offensive career WAR was over 70, but the defense brought him down to 58.7 overall. But still, 11 years is, I think, a lot of years to be really good. All right, next on the list, my number 4 pick is Vic Harris. So Vic doesn't have a playing days card. Neither does John Donaldson. So we've got to settle for cards afterwards. I'll put this one up here so we get rid of some glare. This is from that Ted Williams set. Now, why in for Vic Harris? He was a Negro League manager, and he had 11 managerial seasons, all with the Homestead Grays, and in those 11 years, 663 winning percentage. So that's, that probably should be enough right there to get you in. He won 7 pennants in those years. He was also a pretty good player, though not a Hall of Fame level player by itself. He was a .303 hitter without a whole lot of power. Now, why would you say not in the Hall of Fame? So if you go by his playing, he wouldn't. So I think he's got to get in as a manager. And, he should have won championships with the players he had. Buck Leonard, Josh Gibson, Ray Brown, some years of Judd Williams, Cool Papa Bell, Leon Day. But, you look at guys like Miller Huggins, John McGraw, Joe McCarthy, Joe Torre. They all had really, really good players as well, and they are in the Hall of Fame. So, Vic Harris. Okay, number 5. We are going to go to a third baseman, one of the all-time best, St. Louis Cardinal, Ken Boyer. Now, why should he be in? 62.8 WAR, over 2,100 hits. And he was really good for 9 years, from 56 to 64. fact, he was over 5 WAR in 8 of those 9 years, won an MVP in 1964, which you see on the back of his 65 card. And he even had 4 higher WARs than that MVP season. He was a really good defensive player, so a good fielding third baseman. Now, why would you say not? So kind of like Dick Allen, other than those 9 years, he really didn't have a lot of other good years. In fact, that 1964 season was about his last good year. He ended up playing some there. You see him with the New York Mets. All right, after Ken Boyer, we're now at number 6. And we are going back. He's got a rookie card in 64, but we're just showing his first of just him. 64 is another player on it, kind of like same as Dick Allen. This is Tommy John. Now, why should he be in? Biggest thing, I think, is 288 career wins. That's a lot of wins for somebody not in the Hall of Fame. He did have 61.6 WAR. Some people say he should be in because he's got a surgery named after him. I don't think that's a reason to get Tommy John in. I mean, maybe the surgeon. But if Tommy John didn't have that surgery, basically his career is over after 1974. So he didn't really have a lot of choice if he wanted to keep playing. And, you know, the surgery went well, and he must have done the good rehab and stuff to get through it and pitch again, and he pitched a lot after that. So why not in the Hall of Fame? Because it took him 26 years to get those 288 wins and 61 WAR. He was only on 4 All-Star teams, not a strikeout pitcher, only 2,200 Ks and over 4,700 innings. But not that that should really be a reason. But this is, I think, the biggest reason is single season. Highest WAR was only 5.6, and that was in this 68 season with the White Sox. And now we were just talking about Dick Allen and Ken Boyer averaging over 5 WAR a year for a decade, and Tommy John only had 1 year like that. So that to me is a big reason. And then probably the even bigger reason is compared him to pitchers of the same era. So guys who pitched in his years, and I put a bunch of them out here, other starting pitchers, and Phil Niekro, Gaylord Perry, Tom Seaver, Fergie Jenkins, Juan Marichal, Nolan Ryan, Burt Blyleven, Don Sutton, Steve Carlton, Bob Gibson, Catfish Hunter, Jim Palmer, all better pitchers than Tommy John. So it kind of ranks him lower on that starting pitcher list. Now, it was more of an era of the pitcher, but I think that alone probably is my biggest reason not to vote for Tommy John. There you can see some of his later year cards. I didn't want to show every card of these guys, but tried to give a good sampling of cards. Okay, number 7, and that's his rookie card. This is Dave Parker. Now, Parker's the only guy on this list that I actually got to see as a rookie. Remember watching him in 73 and then beyond, and really watched, for 5 years there. So why in? And I'd say for 5 years, he was one of, if not the best player in baseball. Got to show off his great arm in the 1979 All-Star game. That's another reason I'd say that he belongs in one of the best arms ever. He won an MVP in 1978, and then he was third in 75 and 77. So that's 75 to 79, great 5 years, but why not in the Hall of Fame? Other than those 5 years, he had 1 year with the Reds later on that he was pretty good. But other than that, he did not have another year over 2 WAR. So really just had those 5 years plus 1. So 6 good years, is that enough to get you in the Hall of Fame? I guess is the big question. No other years even over 2 WAR. His career WAR is 40.1, which is pretty low. I would say, though, that if he is going to get in the Hall of Fame someday, it would be nice to get him in now because he's still alive. He's battling Parkinson's. I just don't really think he necessarily deserves getting in, although I would definitely be okay with it. In fact, I've said that 7 of these 8 players, the 7 I've talked about so far, if they get in, I would be totally fine with. Now, number 8 on the other hand, we'll go through. Steve Garvey, I don't think is a Hall of Famer. But why would you say he could get in? Biggest thing, he had 2,599 career hits. So that's a lot of hits. 6 times over 200. 10-time All-Star, so that's quite a bit. He did win an MVP 1974. And the cool thing about that 74 season is he was and I remember this happening and them talking about it on This Week in Baseball and stuff about him being a write-in candidate for the All-Star team, and he actually got voted in as a write-in candidate and then ends up winning the MVP that year. So I thought that was pretty cool. But why not? Why shouldn't he be in the Hall of Fame? I guess one other plus of him getting in, he had 4 Gold Gloves. So why not? He probably shouldn't have won the MVP that 74 season. He probably shouldn't have won any of the 4 Gold Gloves. In fact, he was a poor fielding first baseman. And he, after 1973, never had a positive defensive WAR. And that includes all 4 of his Gold Glove seasons. All was in the negatives. He only had a .329 lifetime on base percentage and only a .446 slugging percentage for a poor fielding first baseman. So I don't think that's Hall of Fame worthy. He only had 1 season over 5 WAR, and that was 5.1. That was the year after his MVP season. So we're talking his best year ever, 5.1, whereas these guys up here averaged more than that for a decade. And then you look at his career WAR, it's 38.0. Now that's less than Harold Baines. And I think a lot of us think Baines was probably a mistake getting into the Hall of Fame. So he'd be the one that I'd be a little disappointed if he got into the Hall of Fame. I think all the rest are good candidates, and I just kind of came down with the order I think they should go in. Then the last thing I want to do is look ahead. Who are some other good candidates to be on this classic era Hall of Fame ballot in the future? And this is my number 1 guy. It's Bill Dolan, shortstop. And back in the dead ball era, he played in the 1890s. He's got a 75 career WAR, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. And this is his Turkey Red card, which I love these Turkey Reds. These are really, really cool. Some other guys, Dick Lundy, one of the top Negro Leaguers, a really good shortstop as well. Maybe I got something a little for the shortstops, but then also Bobby Grich is an over 70 WAR guy not in. Some other good players, Dwight Evans, Thurman Munson, Reggie Smith, Ted Page, Bill Freehand, Vada Pinson, and there's a lot of others too. Those are just a few on the list. But that's it. That's all I got for today. December 8th is when these guys put out their votes, and we will find out. So that is Sunday night. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping we get a couple in. It's possible no one even gets in if nobody gets 12 votes. If these votes get split enough with all these good candidates, that is a possibility. Love to see those 3. But we'll see what we get. All right, thanks a lot for watching. Please leave some comments on what you think about what I think and what you think for these classic era candidates. Thanks very much.